Oh, yeah, that's from the book. That almost sounds like an owl from the book club book. Anyway, to be, anyway, spoiler there about the book club. So the Acts 19 is a raucous chapter of the Bible. Lots of crazy things happened in Ephesus. I kind of dreaded Bible study this week because I just thought they're going to ask about Skiva and they're going to ask about magicians. They're going to ask about all these crazy things that happened in Ephesus. Our focus, though, is the last part of chapter 19, verses 18 through, or 21 through 43. So that's where we are today. So the story opens today not with Paul, not with the way, but with a guy named Demetrius, who is a local resident of Ephesus, and he's a businessman. And did you catch what Demetrius does for a living? Silversmith. He's a silversmith. So is he making, I don't know, candle snuffers like Paul Revere? Or what's Demetrius making? Yeah, it sounds like replica. I had to kind of look this up in different translations. It's stuff to do with that fancy temple in Ephesus. Do you hear? One of the 7 wonders of the world is this Artemis temple. It is, orders of magnitude larger than the Parthenon, which we talked about in Athens a few weeks back. So this was a really big deal. And this site went through different layers of construction and arson and loss and rebuilding. So it is not there now, so that's a reconstructed idea of what it looked like. So it was Artemis or Diana. Artemis was the Greek name. Diana is the Roman name for a goddess of the hunt, goddess of fertility. So that was their thing, Artemis. And Demetrius was all over the Artemis industry. And he could see that sales were plummeting. And instead of saying, how do I adapt in this new economy? Maybe I could make silver things for those the way people, or maybe the tourists. Instead of adapting, he's like, how do I show a grievance about this? I'm upset about this. I think I'll just blame those newcomers into our city and, point out how maybe I divert a little bit from my economic situation and I blame Paul in the way, and then I know what I'll do. I'll say I'll kind of distract away from the fact that it impacts my pocketbook, which is rough. Instead of adapting, I'll blame them, and then I know what I'll do. I'll say they're a threat to our culture. And, they're discrediting my business, but they're dishonoring Artemis. How dare they dishonor Artemis? Well, them's words for fighting. If it's about our culture of Artemis, all the people in his guild were on board with that, and it infuriated them, so they started rioting. It was a mob. They ran amok, Beth Flint. Yes, they ran amok. Yes, so they were running around. They took a couple of Paul's associates hostage in the situation, and they started shouting. What were they shouting? We need the children back. What were they shouting? Great is Artemis of the Ephesians. So they were chanting over and over and over again. And a line that you guys thought were so hilarious in the study groups this week, like it just talks about people running amok, and then there's a line, they were shouting, some people were shouting different things, some people didn't know what they were doing there. You guys loved that. They're like, some people didn't even know why they were there shouting. So it was just, human beings. And I think at that point in study, different people maybe imagine different modern scenarios about this plays out in maybe different ways that we have seen in our lives. And of course, it's always someone on the other side of, what we would shout about. So anyway, it's a crazy scene. Someone named Alexander tries to calm them down. They're not having it. They throw him aside and shout at him. And then finally, who comes to the rescue in Ephesus? the city clerk, the town clerk. So ably done by Esther today. So the town clerk. So think about that. Like other people tried to calm down the situation, they weren't having it. But for some reason, the town clerk weighed in. So they recognized this person. He told them to pipe down, and they did. And he gave a little speech, which they listened to. Interesting little speech. Step 1. Guys, Artemis hasn't gone anywhere. It's a lie. Artemis is right here. We had this, event with Artemis. Artemis is still part of our history and culture. Artemis, the temple's gone nowhere. Artemis is here. Pipe down about that, okay? Stop feeding the frenzy of our culture being on fire. Artemis is absolutely fine, number 1. Number 2, these people that you're throwing under the bus, are they criminals? They are not criminals. They are not stealing anything from the temples, and man, we've got issues with that. They're not harming somebody else. These people aren't criminals, okay? Paul and the Way group, they're not criminals. They're also not denigrating and dishonoring Artemis. Come on, be a little open-minded. They're allowed to have their speech, okay? And then finally he says, you know what is unlawful? What you're doing right now. And that's where Roman law is getting tripped and triggered, is in your mob-like, lawless behavior. That's where we're in trouble. Wow. Don't you wish public officials could make 4 points in front of a group of people and not just be this, that, but be able to say 4 very nuanced things and have people listen, calm down, and it was okay again. Wow. Isn't that marvelous? I just want to sit and say, wow, that's so great. Just a little thing that hit me, because I want to give a little illustration of someone who behaved like a town clerk in the last 10 days or so of craziness. And it's the Utah governor, Spencer Cox. And he, in a very, very tragic situation, spoke to young adults at college campus. And he just said, everybody calm down. Violence is not an answer. And I did a little more research on him, and he is known for a phrase, disagree better. Disagree better. So this wasn't his first rodeo as far as weighing in on very traumatic, emotional, confusing, polarizing matters. So disagree better. What a great phrase. I think probably 95% of us could rally around that phrase. So disagree better. And not just for him, he's a Republican governor. He reached across to the Colorado governor, who is a Democrat, and they're both on board with this disagree better thing. So, that got me going, and I think all of us want to disagree better in the U.S. For that, you don't have to vote publicly, but I hear it from you guys. I think we all want to disagree better. So I thought, let's do a little tutorial today about how we might disagree better. And I put that in the newsletter. I don't know if anybody saw, that was the question prompt. But you may have different ideas, and maybe there'll be a moment now or later on, or even after the Sunday service today, to think about what helps us disagree better. So you could have, what helps us disagree better. I do premarital stuff like that. So you want to disagree better as a couple. I mean, people who love each other disagree. Spoiler alert. So, even with people you love, you have disagreements. Something else that may be new to you, sometimes there's disagreements among family. Yeah, I hate to, break the spell, but sometimes family have disagreements and conflicts. Yeah. I'm just gonna call a spade today, guys. So couples, families, sometimes friends, sometimes organizations and groups have conflict. Yep. So it's a thing, and You know, I'm fascinated by it. I've done mediation training, I think because I hate conflict. But anyway, but I'd like to zero in today on societal conflict. So, in speaking of societal conflict and how do we disagree better amid societal conflict, we got to start with something overarching for a society, and that's law, law, rules, things like that. So you can see I swept away Artemis and I brought the scales of justice with me here. So let's talk a little bit about law. And that's, again, for all of civilization and societies. We try to honor law, not to be cruel, but to create safety, order, and fairness. So it didn't start here. There's law, the concept of law and fairness has been around for thousands of years. One famous milestone in the history of law is the Code of Hammurabi, which was about 1700 years before Jesus' time, so nearly 4,000 years ago. There was a famous Code of Hammurabi, and Hammurabi, he used other codes in his code, but it tried to create fairness in business, fairness in how people treated each other, and it had the rules, and then it also said, and if you do this, this is what's going to happen. So, that has helped people, stuff like that. And we, as Bible types, look to that law and say, you know what, you kind of see echoes of that in Moses' law and the Ten Commandments. Some of the things there, the created order. And then with Moses' law, you also have Roman law. And Roman law comes up a lot in the book of Acts, so it's kind of fun. Yeah, in Jesus' gospel too. So there's Roman law. But I thought for us today, it might be good, since our context is the United States, we talk a little bit about U.S. law. So what do you think is the founding document as far as U.S. law? This is your citizenship part of the sermon today. What else? What was the first one? Okay, I heard the answer. The first document was, dun 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 dun, the Declaration of Independence. So let's do a little reminder here. Declaration of Independence was approved by the Second Continental Congress. You never know when you might get quizzed on this. And it was approved by delegates representing 13 colonies. On what day? So what do we celebrate on the 4th of July? Is it hot dogs? Do we celebrate hot dogs? Baseball? No. What do we celebrate on the 4th of July? The anniversary of Declaration of Independence. So is that our only document? No. What would you say? Oh, well, let's keep learning about the Declaration. Do I have anything there? What is the Declaration of Independence? Which one is that? That is the one that has, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with one another and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So the people were sensing a separation from Britain. But they didn't just want to stomp off in a tantrum. They wrote a declaration of why they thought separation was best. And so they laid it out. So wonderful document, read through it, it's not that long. But another famous part of the Declaration is the opening, the beautiful, beautiful opening. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, asterisk, people, are created equal. How about that? How dare they say such a thing? All are created equal. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So that is a foundational thing about the culture that we live in. the legal system, that shapes us. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. There it is. That is our founding document. So was that enough for us? It proved not enough. This was the document that helped us say we're separate from that tyrant George, but we want to be dignified and civilized and explain why we're separating. Because dignified and civilized people say why they're separating. And we're separating because we value these things. We value life and liberty and every individual's pursuit of happiness. So they found that if they didn't have a little more, people ran amok. So what was the next document that helped them out? Yeah, there's the Articles of Confederation. There were various things, but then the one that really got, that we now hold dear is Constitution. So look at that. Could you have told me that date of the Constitution's signing? Jonathan could, our newest citizen. And then the irony is the anniversary of the Constitution was this week. 238 years. September 17th, 1787, Philadelphia. And who signed that? They're called the Framers. 39 delegates, 12 states. I think Rhode Island was a holdout. Those Rhode Island people. So let's learn a little more about the Constitution. What's in the Constitution? The Constitution. I should have said, what's it famous for? Can anybody sing it? We the people, in order to form a more perfect union. You guys are not Gen X, I can tell. So this is from Schoolhouse Rocks. So look it up, you can sing it. So this is singable. In order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, to provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, not just elites, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution. So the Constitution, was that all that was in the Constitution? No. So the Constitution, I think if you printed it out, I'm trying to think if it'd be like 5 pages or something like that. It has different articles and stuff like that. So, but something, do I have a little slide? The upshot, I think that's helpful for us today to know. The Constitution points out how many branches of government? 3. What are the branches of government? Legislative, executive, judicial. So 3 branches. Why have 3 branches? Yeah, so that no one thing could get power. So you can just see the trauma of the founders. They knew what could happen. They saw what happened in Britain. And the first document said we're separating from that because individuals deserve rights. But they realized we also need a government that we can pool our resources. And if we have to go to war or we have to do certain things, we need to be pooled together. And the Constitution will help us do that. But these 3 branches, are they the boss? They are not the boss. Who set up the 3 branches? We the people. So it starts with we the people saying, we the people are setting up this system, because they were so worried that the system would come and get them. That the government, again, they were traumatized, would come and get them and undermine their rights as unalienable things. So they said, we're going to cede power to a government, but this government is going to balance each other out so that no one branch gets the upper hand. So, because they just, that was their idea. So separation of powers. All right, what is next on my PowerPoints? I do not know. Oh, so we had the Constitution, and then right away, the answer is right there. We didn't just have the Constitution. What else did we get right away? Amendments. And in fact, there were 10 amendments right away. And friends, What are those known as? The Bill of Rights. So right away we got these 10 amendments known as the Bill of Rights. And the first, have you ever heard of the First Amendment? Have you ever heard anyone mention the First Amendment ever in your life? So when they talk about that, they're talking about the first of the 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. Let's take a look at the First Amendment. The First Amendment, Congress, so that's the government, shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. And that's not enough. Or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Why did they do religion first? That's why they left England. Was it Christians persecuting other Christians? Yes. Anybody feel like that's going on today? I sometimes feel like that. So, yeah, there was religious diversity. And the conflict there was war after cruelty. So the very first thing in the amendment was, by the way, practice your religion and you don't have to have a religion. And there shall be Congress, above all, our government, shall have nothing to do with it. Because we've seen what happens when that happens. So, first part of the First Amendment. And then, get this, the other part of the First Amendment. Congress also shall not prohibit free exercise, or abridge the freedom of speech. So can the government tell me what I'm allowed to say and not say? No. 1787, freedom of speech. What if I say something against the Pope? Is that okay? What if I say something against the president? Is that okay? Is that protected speech? What if I say something hateful? Is that protected speech if I say something hateful? It is. I think the gray area is if we say something hateful that is inciting violence, that's a thing. Then, so it's a tricky thing, freedom of speech. Am I allowed to say stuff that you disagree with? Are you allowed to say stuff that I disagree with? Why? Yeah, it's what makes America America. So there it is. And then that, not only that, look who else has right to say whatever they want, apparently. Who else? The press. It's right there in 1787. They were allowed to say stuff, and the Congress shall make no law to shut down the press. Wow. Did you know that was in there? Wow. Or the right of the people to peaceably assemble. Peaceably. Do you see peaceable? Operative word there. And to petition the government for redress of grievances. So use the government, the court system, to redress grievances. So, do you see some elements of that in our story today with the town clerk? You know, trying to get people calmed down, sorting out what's true and what's drama, and saying, okay, what are the rules here? And yeah, and there was enough respect that he could do that. And so that's kind of what's frightening, honestly, in our culture today, is that I think someone trying to be the town clerk, I don't know that they'd be respected in our times today. They might get fired. Right. So I want to call a spade, that, because the text is so funny, leading to this context of how do we agree better? How do we disagree better? So we, in our sphere, have a context of law, but we're also Christ followers. So I thought within my, living here in this context of law, sometimes I disagree with Christ followers. So I thought yesterday, I'm just going to write down things that as a Christ follower that I value. And it turned out there were 10 things. So this was just 10 I wrote down very quickly. Love one another, love enemies, the Beatitudes, look it up, Care for the least. Look it up. I got biblical citations there. God loves everyone. Yeah, that's all over the place. Jesus forgives. Have you heard that one before? The Holy Spirit calls, gives purpose. Baptism shows our self-worth, that we're made in God's image. Communion, that God provides for us daily. And prayer, we need help. Those are 10. I was trying to work in Presbyterian. I couldn't quite work it, darn it. So that would be 11. So do you think that my values, biblical values there, would ever come into conflict with American culture? Do those values equal American culture, do you think? Is there any part of that you might say, Sarah, what you call those Christ-following values, that might be a problem in American culture? Or do you think that's very smooth sailing? Care for the least can be a point of conflict. Anything else there? Love your enemies. Anything else? You think that loving your enemies is easier? All of it. Right, a lot of it has been there, but have we gotten off course, perhaps? So, yeah. When you watch any news source, is there a stock ticker, or is there a ticker that says the number of hungry people in our country? Which one do you see? Oh, a stock ticker. How about people dying of starvation across the globe? Do you see a stock ticker or people dying of hunger? So is that a cultural thing, or am I crazy? Am I crazy to have different values than that? So I'm going to come into conflict in American culture, so I have to be prepared for conflict. So I'm not going to hide. I don't think you should hide if you have values. So what do? One, we're nonviolent in stating what our values. If we are Christ followers, then what's your canon of Christ following? What is your 1, 2, 10? What are your things? And then with that, be nonviolent, and then also be courageous. Find your voice. Don't be afraid. Think of the New Testament. Did they have it easy? Was it conflict-free? Did Paul throw in the towel? Did Jesus? Did other people for the last 2,000 years say it's too hard? They stuck to their values. They were courageous. And the one value I'd like to lift up above all, the way that you disagree must reflect that. And rather than words, look, aren't I a beautiful speaker? Oh, I speak so. I don't care. You can talk all you want. What are your actions? And there's this thing called sophistry, that you can speak very well, but then what are your actions? Showing this. So your actions matter too. So something else that happened this week, remember Alexei Navalny? I talked a lot about him. He was considered the greatest foe of Putin, the leader of Russia. His widow this week said 2 different sources of labs evidence have determined that Navalny, shortly before his death, was poisoned. He was poisoned. That's what Putin does to enemies. That's what Putin does to enemies. So maybe the single greatest thing that shows our values as Christ followers is how we treat our enemies. That shows that we are Christians. To God be the glory. Amen.